Direct quote from John Mitchell: Ireland will try and bore the shit out of us.
Before we got married,
Saturday.
he never swore. Terrible change.
We're not actually referring to my wedding on air. House rules.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So,
but this has been coming because Eddie Jones at the was it the official Six Nations launch last week? I saw one of his little flash video interviews, and he said Ireland have and there was a very pregnant pause. And eventually, I think he said methodical game plan, but I think he wanted people to be thinking boring, dull, tedious, predictable. And if they think this is mind games, like, good luck to them. But can you imagine Joe Schmidt being fazed by this kind of nonsense?
I wouldn't think so. It's very insulting, though, isn't it?
Of course it is, but
I don't know if it is.
What's the point of it? It's
at least it's being honest.
Yeah, is it insulting? Yeah, you're right. It's not really.
I'd rather get like
the defence coach of England has just been asked, how do you think Ireland will try and beat you? Now, he has just said they'll try and bore the shit out of us.
What's wrong with that?
It's not the most analytical response. I don't think that's his answer.
He's not going to go into great detail in 5 Live 4 days out from the game, Joe.
Are you honestly telling me you think that's fine? That's normal?
It's not normal, but at least it's an opinion.
It's not an opinion. It's just
it is an opinion.
Deliberately insulting. I don't think Ireland win games by trying to bore the opposition. I don't actually think they play
England
against
did for years, though.
And hope, hopefully they get bored.
But that's the way England played for years. England bored people for years.
What's the main thing about Joe Schmidt's sides that's been a constant over the last 3, 4, 5 years, regardless of success?
Possession-based game.
Which essentially to a lot of people would be?
Tiki-taka rugby.
Which is...
They score a hell of a lot of tries for
a lot of rucks,
team,
a lot of kicking. Yeah. Although interesting, I was seeing it was on the 42 of the piece. Ireland in last year's Six Nations, 23 minutes and 15 seconds of possession per game. 23 minutes, 15 seconds.
And what's the average?
England right behind them, number 2, with 22 minutes of possession per game.
Okay.
So, gulfs apart really there, are we? We'll talk to Eddie O'Sullivan and Matt Williams. To be fair, Matt in Virgin Media last year did describe the Irish game plan as a bit boring, but that was different. That was different.
Oh, Matt says it's grand. Your little buddy from the telly. That's fine.
The England defence coach, though.
Are you excited about it? Other than being on the telly, are you excited?
Yeah. England coming to Dublin for the first time since 94 or 5.
For the opening game, is it?
The opening game,
I didn't realise that. Okay.
Today,
yeah.
No, massively. Obviously, the World Cup looms large. No one has managed repeat Grand Slams since the French in '98. Wouldn't that be a major carrot to aim for? That'd be an extraordinary achievement.
Yeah. No, I think there's definitely more of a buzz because of what's coming down the road. And I know that there have been a couple of other World Cup years that there were great expectations. But I think there's more substance to it this time, and people believe in it a bit more. So because of that, there's a huge excitement. Like I got offered an interview last week. They did a few things through a sponsor, and I got offered Tyke Byrne. So I spent hours reading up for Tyke Byrne interviews. But then he got the injury. I said he was going for a scan, and I was thinking this is going to be pulled surely. And then there was no word till quite late in the day, and but then it was pulled, and I got a text, and he got Jacob Stockdale instead. I said, so it wasn't a bad plan B, and he was actually brilliant. A really interesting guy. Like for something like that, like it's not you're not giving a huge amount of time. You're giving 20 minutes or so, but for that kind of interview, like it's still a one-on-one. It was really worthwhile. I was very impressed by him. For a young guy, like it's a lot to him, I think.
When will we see that?
Saturday, day of the game.
Right.
Yeah,
brilliant. Was he doing?
But just going into it, just wanted to know his.
Just yourself?
Yeah. But like his father works in prisons.
Yeah, I read that.
And he's gone in himself. He was talking about that a bit. It's quite interesting. And
is his father a chaplain in prison?
Yeah, chaplain, Presbyterian chaplain. Yeah, I talked to him a bit about that Presbyterianism because my son goes to Presbyterian schools. I'm a bit curious about it because I don't know much about the faith. And he's a very mature guy. He likes Johnny Cash and Bob Dylan. Just unusual for a 21-year-old.
It's all right, though.
It's a hip-hop world. There's not many Johnny Cash fans of 21 years old.
Jacob Stockdale's going up in everyone's estimation. And he's gone into... I do remember seeing quotes around that theme maybe about a year ago where he was talking about being in prisons and...
he studied criminology for a while, but I think this was related to his father's work, the reason he did this.
But realising there's lots of people who are not necessarily bad people in prisons and they've been dealt difficult hands in life and having an appreciation for all that.
Yeah, so it goes into that, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, great. We'll keep an eye out for that on Saturday. I don't see how Ireland's approach is much different to, say, the All Blacks. Both sides hang on to the ball. Maybe you could argue that the Kiwis are better with counter-attack ball and that's why they're not labelled dull, but I'll take winning ugly every time from Jack, who remembers the bad old days in the 90s. It's a fair text in. We wouldn't be a counter-attacking type team. We we were talking, we played that on Facebook Live earlier with Matt Williams and Eddie O'Sullivan talking about who'll play 15, you know. And Rob Kearney didn't have a great game at the weekend, but they both reckoned we'll play it all after 8. But they were saying it's not Rob Kearney's job to counter-attack. That's not the type of team we are. Yeah. We're take it up and get through the phases again.
I know this is hard to accept since we became rugby country, but...
we've always been rugby country.
We've always been rugby country. But we were talking about this a bit outside, that I think it is a sport you need to... it really helps if you've played it to understand it.
Yeah.
As I would say, you're more convinced of that now that you've got this gig because
so. But even,
it's so technical.
Even, world-renowned backs come in here and say they don't have a clue what's happening with the forwards.
Yeah.
So even within the game, you're only qualified to talk about so much. We had Andy Friend on last week, who's doing a fantastic job at Connacht. Like, they're one of the most improved sides around. And he said, look, frankly, I'm very reliant on my coaches in the forwards. I can sort of offer half an opinion if the scrum's going down, but really, I'm looking over at my coaching staff going, can you fix that? Because I played fullback and I'm not really, it's not my speciality. So even this coach who's doing a phenomenal job and has been in the game for 20, 30 years was saying, I have an opinion on what goes on in the scrum, but it's not a professionally valid one. So it's a mad old game.
Yeah. Who have you learned most from?
Richie, I'd say. In life, Richie McCormick.
Best answer. And true.
He's been very fair to all the pundits on the artists formerly known as TV3.
They're all good in their own ways because the game will be unfolding, and if there's an issue with the breakdown, they might all say to Shane Jennings, what's going on there, Shane?
Yeah.
They'll defer to each other in different areas of play, even in that environment. You know? So,
because I remember a few years ago, Ger had a Saturday panel. I can't remember who he had on. God, I can't remember offhand. But he was explaining the difference between what a 6 does and a 7.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. I must dig it out. I'm sure it must be in podcast somewhere. Because when you haven't played the game, you're not really sure. Like, you hear people saying, "Oh, he's a groundhog," or "He does this," or "He does that." And you're going, I'd like a bit more detail. What is the difference in their roles? And to hear it explained. And the same between a 12 and a 13. To hear that explained properly, the difference in the roles and stuff.
Brian O'Driscoll's worth checking out. He was on OTBM AM last week doing the depth chart for the centres, and he did at certain points talk about 12 v 13, certainly saying the difference is more profound when it comes to defending as opposed to an attack. But it's an unbelievably technical game. Like, we're only kind of scratching the surface. It's very hard in radio when you can't throw diagrams and really slow things down. But anyway.
Imagine in the crowd, like, more, because I wouldn't go to that many rugby games in person. But imagine in the crowd, it can be very difficult to follow at times, especially if you don't have a zoom in on what's going on in a ruck.
Yeah,
it's a great point. Like I said, I've learned the most from Richie.
Learned the most from me.
I should remind you, by the way, we had the much anticipated Culshees versus Dublin charity match in Abbottstown. Brian Kerr was one manager, John Giles was the other. Kevin Kilban played, turned up late, but he got there in the end.
Played is a bit of a generous term.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Were you there?
No.
I couldn't make it either.
I've seen the highlights, Joe.
I've seen some of the footage.
Nobody gets covered in glory.
It's like a pinball machine.
No one got injured now, because people normally get injured in those kind of games.
I think anyone's moving quite fast enough.
No, I've seen some media games that people have ended up with crutches, bad injuries.
Motion resulting in injuries. This wasn't.
Low speed doesn't kill, thankfully, was the point from today. So most of the off-the-ball team were involved, and the result is a closely guarded secret. We're going to show you all the action and highlights across our social channels tomorrow at 1. There is a rumour, I'm reading here, Adrian Barry did a Cruyff turn. And remember, it's all in aid of the Irish Heart Foundation's Show Some Heart for the Perfect Matchup campaign. So basically, they want the Irish Heart Foundation, you to, if you have a team or you've got a bunch of mates, challenge each other to a match and give all the proceeds to irishheart.ie.
Was there a Ballon d'Or?
/perfect match. Got to give that out. irishheart.ie /perfect match. I don't think so. I don't...
no man of the match? No Ballon d'Or?
I really don't think anyone did well enough to warrant one.
Okay.
Would have been a waste of a trophy.
Based on the footage I've seen. Yeah. At one point, John Giles could be seen on the sideline, not sure what.
Questioning his life choices.
How have I ended up here?
I've never seen him look emotional before, but I think he kind of definitely did at some point during the second half.
Yeah.
He probably turned down a nice 4 ball for that.
Probably did and all.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to play Jim Gavin and chat GAA in about 15 minutes' time. Richie, you've got all the day's news?
Yeah, Ireland head coach Joe Schmidt has no new injury concerns ahead of Saturday's start of the Six Nations. The Irish squad back on Irish soil following their sojourn in Portugal. Tyke Byrne and Ian Henderson remain the only confirmed absentees for the visit of England to the Aviva. Adam Byrne and Quinn Roux remain with the squad after joining up with the panel in Portugal last week, while Rob Kearney and Jack McGrath both came through Leinster's Pro 14 win over the Scarlets on Friday night unscathed. Keith Earls was the first man in front of the media this week and knows the scale of the challenge coming Ireland's way this weekend.
Yeah, of course, they're a top quality side. Just looking at some of the back three they've picked, and it's hard to believe that one or two of them are going to miss out in selection. They're world class players. I think with the Vunipola brothers coming in as well, I think they're going to have threats all over the field, and we are going to have to start strong, not like we did in the last couple of years where we kind of had a slow start or a Johnny Sexton kick getting us out of trouble. I suppose that puts a lot of pressure on ourselves as well, and look, we're aiming to start on a high, but we know what the challenge that's in front of us is massive.
Keith Earls there. Jim Gavin says the GAA is lacking vision with its scrapping of the proposed 3 hand pass rule. The Dublin manager was speaking after his side opened their Allianz Football League season with a 2-13 to 1-13 loss to Monaghan in Clonus. Meanwhile, Dublin's opponents next week, Galway, opened their Division 1 account with a 13 points to 11 win over Cavan, while Sean O'Shea's proficiency with the dead ball helped Kerry begin with an 11 points to 7 win over Tyrone yesterday. Typically, Brian Cody wasn't getting too carried away with Kilkenny's start to the 2019 Allianz Hurling League. A youthful Cat side were too good for Cork yesterday, winning on a 2-18 to 17 point scoreline. Cody was asked by his best friend Oisin Langan after yesterday's game what he wants to see from his side at this time of year.
Actually, really, at this time of the year, you're looking at attitude and the way they approach the thing, and the fact that they just go about it and just go and play, but attitude is huge, really, because if that's not right, everything else is wrong.
That's Brian Cody speaking to Oisin there.
I did see, I think it was Vincent Togan today in the Irish Independent was remarking on Brian Cody's use of the word genuineness.
Yeah.
Codyism. There's genuineness.
He uses the word genuine a hell of a lot. Yeah, definitely does.
So we'll talk to Tommy Welch actually and get his thoughts on Kilkenny as well as everything else.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Aaron Gallant scored 1-5 as All Ireland champions Limerick beat Wexford 117 to 211 at Innovate Wexford Park. Meanwhile, Wexford Camogie said they're actively seeking a new manager after Martin Kerry stepped down after the team failed to put out a side for their Division 1 league clash with Cork at the weekend. He was only appointed a year ago, and the bulk of the Wexford team were without the St Martin's contingent, who were playing Insacar of Cork in the All Ireland Club semi-finals, but they failed to field the side, but hope to have one out next weekend for their next outing in the Camogie League. Over a quarter of a century after his departure as a player, Roy Keane is back at Nottingham Forest. He's agreed to be Martin O'Neill's assistant manager for a second time following their 5-year spell together in charge of the Republic of Ireland. Keane took Forest training with O'Neill this morning and was unveiled by the club as their new assistant this afternoon. And the Corkman, speaking to their in-house TV, is looking forward to being reunited with his boss.
When Martin got the job and obviously gave me a shout, I thought, listen, once a few things fell into place, I was ready for it. But it's not going to be easy, but we'll have a good go. Obviously, I've used respect for Martin and the club, so it just fell into place nicely, and looking forward to it. As you said, I've seen the team a number of times over the last year or two. It's going to be tough, but hopefully with maybe 1 or 2 signings, bit of luck, we hopefully be competing.
They had a good win at the weekend as well. O'Neill was ridiculed initially for going with 3 defensive midfielders, and then they won 3-1.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, they're up against it. I think their last 8 managers haven't lasted a full season, so all the odds are stacked against them. And the other question is Martin O'Neill going back into club management, like his last Sunderland ended badly. Didn't Villa, I suppose, was different. He had a couple of decent seasons, and then it was more or less a row over money that he ended there. But
you'd have to say his Villa job in hindsight was very good. And
of course,
finished, 6th.
Yeah, he had 2 top 6 finishes, two 6th place finishes, I think. But John Robinson was still with him then, and a lot of people do say that he was the major influence in the training ground, whereas it's questionable what Roy Keane's influence in the training ground is from what we've heard. So.
I think that's a fair point, given everything. It's funny. Kev Kilban was saying he was talking to a manager who's worked in England and Scotland and would be very O'Neill-like in his approach. Would just do drills. That would be training. Just drills, whatever, cones, few shots, little 5-a-side, done. Everyone in, lads, shower. And Kev was saying to him, but set piece routines and tactics and everything. Why are you not doing that? And his response was, I've tried that. it makes no difference. Interesting. He's like, I tried it. And at the level he was managing at, he said, it makes no difference.
Right.
Makes no odds. Maybe it makes a difference with players higher up. But he said, it makes no odds. So I just do it that way and out we go and try and keep the morale up. So, I mean, maybe with a club team you can get away with it more than an international team who aren't playing alongside each other all the time. It was notable Ireland played their best football around Euro 2016 when they were all together for a prolonged period. So maybe at club level you can get away with it more.
Possibly, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm not convinced by this.
You're not sure it's
just
what you'd advocate.
in a funny position. Like, there wasn't too much wrong at Forest. They weren't.
No, they were only
Nigel
4
Karanka,
off the playoffs when he came in.
When Karanka was sacked, they were only 4 off the playoffs. So I don't know. It just seems like a strange situation above O'Neill. Like, everything running that club seems to be a little bit off.
Yeah. The other thing is O'Neill. I think it was twice before he turned this job down. So I think it kind of shows. I wouldn't say he's desperate, but I think he was very, very keen to get back in, and I think he figured I'm not going to get a huge amount of offers, so I think that's why he jumped at it. So. Yeah.
Meanwhile, we have a new player for the Republic of Ireland.
It seems you do. Yeah, Will Keane set to become a Republic of Ireland player. The former England under-21 forward is currently unknown with Hull City and has reportedly requested to formally switch his allegiance from England to Ireland, a process that will take a couple of months. Keane qualifies through his Dublin-born father Aidan and is taking the opposite route to his brother Michael, who played for Ireland at underage level before opting for England. Mick McCarthy is also set to continue talks with Leeds striker Patrick Bamford, while Daryl Murphy is still contemplating the Ireland manager's request to end his international retirement.
I'm a bit underwhelmed by this, I have to say.
Yeah, it's fair to say if you're a striker with the opportunity to get an Irish passport, you got a hell of a chance.
Well, like, Will Keane is 26 and he scored 7 goals as a professional footballer, as a striker. He's 26.
We're probably getting another Scott Hogan here.
Yeah, but I think it just shows the paucity of options up front. You know, there's nobody you can trust. Like, even Shane Long is a Premier League regular, but he hardly ever scores. Like, he has a lot of other attributes, but I think it shows a desperation. Even go back to Daryl Murphy, he's been in okay club form, but you know, he is retired. He is hitting his mid-30s, and they're trying to get him back in the fold.
There is a chance that he could strike. We saw what happened with David Healy in the North, like barely playing a game for Sunderland, gets on a run for a very middling team at international level and scores a rake of goals. So you could gain confidence out of nowhere and keep that run going.
In theory, but I think this kind of, to be honest, when you hear this kind of stuff, it kind of dilutes a bit of the optimism around the supposedly handy draw and the dream teams, and you suddenly go, this is reality. We'll probably lose Declan Rice. Are we getting a striker who never scores?
Look, Gibraltar first up, that's all we can worry about, Kieran.
Okay.
And I'm very
process orientated.
Very confident. Where are we going next, Rich?
Next to Neil Warnock, he concedes it's very difficult to concentrate on football with Cardiff City barely a week removed from the disappearance of Emiliano Sala's plane. Relatives of the Argentine striker are overseeing their own air and sea search after more than 4,000 people contributed to a crowdfunding appeal. The family have headed to Guernsey, near where the footballer's missing aircraft is believed to have come down. Cardiff return to the field for the first time since the tragedy tomorrow evening away to Arsenal, a game before which a minute's reflection will be held. Neither side will wear black armbands, and that's at the request of Sala's family. Warnock said today that some of his players have been undergoing counselling following Sala's loss, and he himself has been receiving help from the League Managers Association.
I would be wrong to say everything's back to normal and we're, firing on all cylinders, because it's not like that. It feels strange. You feel, well, like the gentleman said there, you're absolutely shut. You feel tired all the time. Even when you've had a sleep, you wake up tired. And I suppose it's to do with stress or what have you, the doc says. But it doesn't seem to get any easier at the moment. Whether tomorrow night is great that I've got something else on my mind for a change, because everything magnifies daily on the, with the family and everything else, So I am really, not very often have I ever said, John, I'm lost for words. Have I? Neil Warnock. But that's how I am at the minute.
Yeah, pretty grim.
Yeah, the whole press conference is actually a really difficult listen for somebody who kind of take the mickey out of a lot. Neil Warnock, he's being very open and honest, and I don't think it doesn't take much scratching at the surface to find the level of feeling. He's one of the few people at Cardiff to have any dealings with Sala on a one-to-one basis. He'd flown in a plane with David Ibbotson, the pilot, as well. Cardiff for the first side after the Leicester tragedy, to play Leicester as well. I mean, this is all stuff that's been piling up, and unfortunately. Alvaro Morata, meanwhile, has signed an 18-month loan deal with Atletico Madrid. The Spanish international striker's endured a difficult 18 months at Chelsea since his €65 million move from Real Madrid. Morata scored 16 times in 47 Premier League appearances for Chelsea, and his departure from Stamford Bridge follows the loan arrival of Gonzalo Higuain. Here at home, Cork City have signed Gary Boylan. The versatile defender leaves Sligo Rovers after making a century of appearances for the Bit of Red. And there's a battle of the bees to conclude the FA Cup fourth round action for the weekend. National League side Barnet are looking to reach round 5 for the very first time they play host to Championship outfit Brentford. Kick-off at the Hive is at 7:45 with the fifth round draw taking place shortly.
Richie, thanks very much for that. So next up we're going to look back at some of the Allianz League action. We'll play what Jim Gavin had to say post-match. It was pretty interesting stuff, especially on the lack of vision from the leadership of the GAA. They have failed to articulate a vision. It's a little bit of a nightmare at the moment, were some of his quotes, believe it or not. So we'll play that in a moment. And Tommy Welch will join us as well to talk about the hurling. That's on the way.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
I think there was an awkward moment when they searched her and it was like, excuse me madam, we found 20